She was a saint, a holy figure revered by the Orthodox Church for her piety and compassion. But she was also a ruthless monarch, an iron-willed ruler who forged an empire in blood and iron and crushed anyone who dared to stand in her way. This is the story of a woman who was called King of Kings, a ruler who became both a sacred icon and a feared conqueror. This is the story of Queen Tamar of Georgia. So how can one person be both? In the 12th century, Tamar's reign would mark the absolute peak of Georgia's power, a period so brilliant it's known as the nation's Golden Age. And yet, this era of incredible cultural achievement was built on a foundation of brutal warfare and absolute authority. To her people, she was a protector sent by God. To her enemies, she was an unstoppable force. So, who was the real Queen Tamar? The answer is way more complex and more fascinating than the legends let on. Tamar's journey to absolute power didn't begin with a grand victory, but with a desperate political gamble. Her father, King George III, had no sons. So to keep the dynasty alive and avoid a civil war over the succession, he did something unheard of in Georgian history. In 1178, he crowned his teenage daughter, Tamar, as his co-ruler. It was a radical move in a deeply patriarchal world, a bet to legitimize her claim before he died. For 6 years, she ruled by his side, learning the brutal math of power in a court filled with ambitious nobles who saw a female heir and smelled weakness. When her father died in 1184, that weakness was put to the test. The powerful aristocratic clans, who hated her father's strong rule, saw their chance. They forced the young queen, now on her own, to be crowned a second time. A symbolic move to show that her power came not just from God, but from them. They demanded she fire her father's most loyal officials, and she had to give in. One faction pushed even further, demanding a new council that would hold all law-making power, effectively making the monarchy powerless. Tamar refused. She had their leader arrested and then skillfully negotiated with the remaining rebels, offering just enough to avoid a civil war. It was her first big test, and she passed with a cunning that nobody expected from someone so young, but the biggest pressure from the nobles was marriage. They needed an heir, sure, but what they really wanted was a king, a man they could control, who would put Tamar back in her proper place. They picked a Rus prince for her, Yuri Bogolyubsky, a man known for his military prowess. The marriage was a complete disaster. Yuri was described as a drunk, given to cruelty, and totally obsessed with his own ambition. He clashed constantly with Tamar's own formidable will. So after 2 years, Tamar did the unthinkable for a 12th century Christian queen. She publicly accused her husband of misconduct and demanded a divorce. She convinced the country's bishops to dissolve the marriage, and Yuri was kicked out, exiled to Constantinople. This was a stunning declaration of independence. The nobles had forced her into a marriage, but she was ending it on her own terms. She had survived the first storm of her reign and was now free to choose her own path. And her own husband, an Alan prince named David Soslan, whom she married for both affection and alliance. But Yuri, her ex-husband, wasn't done. Nursing his wounded pride, he would be back, backed by angry nobles, to try and take by force what he'd already lost. With her power more secure at home, one side of Tamar's legacy began to truly shine, that of the pious and righteous ruler. And this wasn't just for show. By all accounts, Tamar was a deeply devout woman. She was known to pray and fast, and was even said to have worked alongside the laborers, building the incredible rock-hewn monastery of Vardzia. She was a defender of Christianity everywhere, funding churches and monasteries not just in Georgia, but across the known world, from Palestine to Mount Athos. This devotion was reflected in her rule. In a move that was almost unheard of for the time, Tamar's reign became known for its incredible mercy. Later chronicles praise her for abolishing the death penalty and torture. And while that may be an idealization, it's clear that the harsh punishments her father had used were a thing of the past. Her rule was marked by compassion, religious tolerance, and even social welfare. She reportedly set aside 1/10 of the state's entire treasury to care for the poor. This stability and mercy created the perfect conditions for what we now call the Georgian Golden Age. Under her patronage, culture and art exploded. It was during her reign that Georgia's national epic poem, The Knight in the Panther's Skin, was written by Shota Rustaveli and dedicated to the Queen. The poem not only immortalized her, but also contained the shockingly progressive line, "The lion's whelps are equal, be they male or female." New cathedrals shot up, philosophy thrived, and Georgia forged a powerful national identity. She was so revered that people started calling her a saint while she was still alive, a messenger of the Messiah, whose wisdom was proof of God's favor. But this golden age of mercy and art was paid for with steel and blood. While one of Tamar's hands was building churches, the other was wielding a sword with terrifying skill. The benevolent saint from the history books was, to her enemies, an expansionist powerhouse. Tamar's reign was one of near constant war. And she didn't just give orders from the capital. She often rode with her armies to the frontier to give inspiring speeches before retreating to a nearby church to pray for their victory. Her prayers, it seems, were always answered. Her armies, led by her husband David Soslan, were a force to be reckoned with. Her decisiveness was tested when her disgraced ex-husband, Yuri, returned. Backed by a powerful group of nobles, he launched 2 separate rebellions to try and seize the throne. Tamar's response was swift and brutal. Her armies crushed the revolts. After the second attempt, Yuri was defeated for good and vanished from history. In the process, she had not only eliminated an internal threat, but she had also replaced the old, defiant nobles with men loyal only to her. Her power was now absolute. With her kingdom united behind her, Tamar turned her gaze outward. Her armies pushed back the Seljuk Turks, winning massive victories at Shamkor in 1195 and Basyan in 1202. Legend has it that before the Battle of Basyan, the Seljuk Sultan sent her a demeaning letter, demanding she convert to Islam and become his wife, or else be taken as a concubine. Tamar's army delivered her reply on the battlefield, crushing the Sultan's forces. This was the start of an era of unprecedented expansion. Under Tamar, the Kingdom of Georgia reached its largest size in history. Her empire stretched from the Black Sea to the Caspian, dominating the entire Caucasus region. Georgian armies pushed deep into Armenia and northern Persia, sacking cities and putting entire kingdoms under Georgian protection. Her influence was so vast that her official title became a mouthful of power. The Queen of Abkhazians, Kartvels, Rans, Coks, and Armenians, Shirvan-Shakin and Shakin-Shakini, the sovereign of the East and West. Then in 1204, she took advantage of the chaos of the Fourth Crusade, sacking Constantinople. and established the Empire of Trebizond on the Black Sea as a Georgian client state, extending her power even further. This relentless expansion, this utter crushing of her rivals, reveals the other side of Queen Tamar. If you're finding this story of saints and conquerors as fascinating as we do, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join us for more deep dives into history's most complicated figures. So, how do we square this? The saint who was praised for her mercy, and the conqueror who waged relentless war. The patron of the arts, and the purger of political rivals. To her chroniclers, and to many Georgians today, there is no contradiction at all. Her military victories were seen as proof of her divine righteousness. Her strength was a reflection of her piety. She was a strong monarch because she was a saint, and her wars were righteous, fought to protect her Christian kingdom from its enemies. The official histories, written by those who adored her, naturally cemented this image. Her gender also played a huge role in shaping this legacy. As Georgia's first female ruler to actually govern, she had to be stronger, more decisive, and more successful than any man just to be seen as legitimate. Where a king's ambition was expected, a queen's was revolutionary. Her every success became the stuff of legend, her every victory a miracle. She wasn't just a queen. She was given the male title Mepe, or king, because the Georgian language literally had no word for a female monarch with that much power. The golden age she created was brilliant, but tragically short. Just 2 decades after her death in 1213, the Mongol hordes would arrive and shatter the empire she had built. The power and unity of Tamar's Georgia became a cherished memory, a lost ideal of strength and prosperity. And that timing only made her legend shine brighter, casting her reign as the last great beacon of light before a long, dark night. Queen Tamar remains one of history's most compelling and paradoxical rulers. She was a builder and a destroyer, a compassionate reformer and an iron-fisted autocrat. She nurtured a cultural renaissance that celebrated poetry and philosophy, all while her armies were carving out one of the most powerful empires of the age. Her legacy was carefully crafted, immortalized in epic poems and church frescoes. But the raw facts of her reign speak for themselves. She was a political and military genius who bent a kingdom and a continent to her will. So, what's the verdict? Was Queen Tamar a divinely guided saint who did what was necessary to protect and build up her kingdom? Or was she a ruthless conqueror cloaked in the robes of piety? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And for more stories of incredible rulers from history, check out our video on another legendary monarch right here. Thanks for watching.